Since we already have the common denominator, do we factor as our first step when we add and subtract?
No.
No. Where does the adding and subtracting take place in this problem? The numerator or the denominator or both? Just the numerator. So 5x minus 4x. And then what's our constant going to be?
-6.
What is 1 minus -7?
Oh.
8. I don't know why I'm putting this in parentheses. And then when you put them together, one denominator, we've done our adding. So it's always adding and then simplifying. In order to simplify this, now what do we need to do to the denominator? Now we need to factor it. So x squared minus 64, what will that factor to?
8 and 8.
Perfect. X plus 8, x minus 8. And the whole reason we then factor it is now what can we do? Cross out. What's left in the numerator?
X minus 8. 1.
1 over... Oh, I crossed off the wrong one, you guys. Go that way. That one's still there. So remember, if they all go away, a 1 remains. So common denominator, that's what we did yesterday. What we're going to start looking at today is if you had something like this. If you don't have a common denominator, how do you make a common denominator? Multiplication. So you look at your denominators and you think, okay, like, what can these both turn into? Can we do a 20? Yes. Is there a better number? Yes. We can make them both into a 10. So if we wanted these both to be 10s, how do you make a 2 into a 10? Times 5. And when you times it by 5, does the numerator also get times by 5? Yeah. The second fraction, does it need anything? No. So then it would just stay there, and then you would proceed. If it was something like this, could you use 24?
No.
Yes. Because can 4 and 6 both be made into a 24? Is there a smaller number that 4 and 6 both go into? 12. If you wanted to make them both a 12, 4 times what is 12? 6 times what is 12? 2. So when you get a common denominator, the main thing is it's through multiplication. If we go back to this one right here, we don't have a common denominator. It's written as multiplication, so you want to think of it as like, what pieces are there? If you look at the numbers, what number is really in the denominator of the first fraction? A 1. What number is in the second one? A 6. So between a 1 and a 6, what will our common denominator be?
6.
A 6. So for sure our common denominator is going to have a 6 in there. And then look at your variables. We have an x and we have an x squared. Very close. We need an extra x. So when you're looking at your variables, the higher exponent is your common denominator. Because this one has an x squared, and we can make an x into an x squared. So this first fraction, if it is a 1 and it needs to be a 6, what do we multiply by? 6. And then to get our x squared, x. Does this second fraction need to be multiplied by anything?
No.
No. So that one's just going to hang out. And remember, when you multiply, you're technically multiplying both numerator and denominator. So what is 6x times 4? What's our new numerator? 24x. So step 1 today is we just have to multiply to get a common denominator. Once we have a common denominator, it's exactly like yesterday. What is our combined numerator going to be? Numerator?
Oh.
Ooh, can we add the 7 and the 24? No, that one doesn't have an x. Perfect. 24x plus 7. Once we add them together, this is our addition. We're done adding, but we should always check, can we simplify? So if we are going to be able to simplify it, we would have to be able to factor something out of the numerator. Can we factor anything? No. So we are done right there. 7 doesn't go into 24. We can't take out an x. Can we reduce the 24 and the 6? No, not the plus 7 ruins it. So remember, you can't, if you have adding and subtracting, they're not going to be able to cancel away unless you factor it out. Next one, last one we're going to do in the notes is this guy right here. Yeah. It's one fraction minus the other. Yeah, it's just spread out. So step 1, do we have a common denominator? No. These are kind of the tricky ones to see with the common denominator. When you look for a common denominator, you're looking for the multiplication pieces. In 7th grade, you guys found common denominators using like greatest common factor, least common multiple. You found those by writing them as multiplication problems and then putting all the multiplication problem like pieces together. Probably don't remember doing that, but you did do that. So when we look for greatest common factor to be our, least common multiple to be our common denominator, we need to see its multiplication pieces, because that's really what the common denominator is. The 4 and the 6, they can both be made into a 12 because of their multiplication pieces. So we need to be able to see the multiplication pieces here. So we are going to factor these denominators. We're not factoring the numerators. You never factor the numerators to begin with. You start by factoring your denominators. So x squared plus 2x minus 8, what can that be broken into? Which one's positive? X plus 4, x minus 2. And then what about minus 6, positive 1? Good, plus 3, minus 2. So remember, when you have opposite signs, whatever sign you end in, that is your bigger number. So the reason we do that is now we see multiplication pieces. So this one has x plus 4, x minus 2. This one has x plus 3 and x minus 2. So do they have pieces in common? What piece do they have in common? X minus 2. So for sure, in our common denominator, they're both going to have an x minus 2, because that is already common. To get the rest of your common denominator, it's all of the pieces together. So x minus 2 is one of the pieces. What's another piece that's in the denominator? X plus 3. What's our last piece? X plus 4. So to get your common denominator, it's all of the pieces between them. So all of the pieces that you see in the denominator, you don't write repeats. Like I'm not going to write the x minus 2 twice, because that's just one of the pieces. It just happens to be in both. I like writing the denominators first because we got to make sure that these are going to match up. So originally, this has x plus 4, x minus 2. We needed to have all 3 of these pieces though. So what piece is our first fraction missing? It already has the x plus 4. Yeah, it's missing the x plus 3. So this guy is going to get multiplied by x plus 3, because we need to introduce that into the denominator. So I'm going to multiply the top by that. When you multiply that x plus 3, remember the 2x multiplies with both pieces in there to give us 2x squared plus 6x. Then you go on to the second fraction. What piece is this missing out of our common denominator? X plus 4. So now we can do x plus 4 as our new numerator. Getting the common denominator is just all the individual pieces, and then you just multiply that fraction by whatever pieces it's missing. Once you have a common denominator, now we can actually go ahead and do our subtraction. How many x squared will we have? 2x squared. How many x's? Minus 4. The reason we can't factor the numerator is, can you add and subtract things that are in parentheses? No. So in order to be able to do the adding and subtracting, it has to be just like normal. The reason we factor the denominator is so we can see the pieces to put them together. This is added and subtracted. Done with that. Now we just have to make sure it's simplified. So if we want to simplify this, now what would we have to do to the numerator? Factor it. So if it's going to be a 2x squared, what do our parentheses have to start with? 2x and x. We can't take the 2 out because of this 5 here in the middle. What do our signs have to be? Different. If we're going to multiply to a negative, we have to have opposite signs. And then what multiplies to give us a 4? 4 and 1, or 2 and 2. So see if there's any of those that would fit. Give it a whirl. we find any? Would 2 and 2 work? Is everything factorable? No. So if it's not factorable, we're done right there. Most things on your assignment are factorable. So you should always try to factor, but remember, if it's not working out, it's not working out. In your assignment now, so this packet, the numbers that I have up here do not match the numbers that you have. So I trust your ability to find the problem. Like, this is not number 5. Find it. Oh, Angelica, let the cat out of the bag. At this point, since I'm just doing homework, if you tune me out, that's fine. All I'm doing is by the end of this, you will have this first page pretty much done. If you want to, yeah. All right, so starting here, what you should always look for first is, do you have a common denominator? So do we have a common denominator? No. Part of it is common, though. What part is common? The x. So for sure, our new common denominator is going to have an x. And then look at your number. So we have a 2 and we have a 3. What number can 2 and 3 both be made into? 6. I like writing the denominators first because then it's easier for me to see. I need to make a 2x into a 6x. So how do you change a 2x into a 6x? Times it by 3. So instead of it being a 15 on top, what number is it really? 45. This other one, it is a 3x. We need it to be a 6x though. So what does it get multiplied by? 2. 16 times 2. Once you get your common denominator, now can you go ahead and subtract them? What is 45 minus 32?
13.
Does your denominator change? No. After that, so this is the adding and subtracting. Now you check to see, can you simplify it? Okay, so can you simplify 13 over 6? No. So you're done. Next one. Step 1, do they have a common denominator? No. Step 2, what would it be? So look at your numbers first. What number can they both be made into?
A squared.
Number 8. It's really nice when you have a 1 on some of them, because 1 can be made into anything. Variable-wise, what can they both be made into? A squared. So write your denominator first, and then after that, all you're going to be doing is changing it. So how does 8 squared change into an 8a squared? So our new numerator will be 32a. How does an 8a change into an 8a squared? Times the a, which will give us 7. Now what can we do? Subtract. So 32a minus 7a. Denominator stays the same. Can we simplify this one? Yeah, the a's can cancel. 25 and 8, nothing goes into them, but those a's can cancel. Next one. Do we have a common denominator? No. So what do we want to do? Factor the denominator. So if you don't have a common denominator, your first thing would be like, okay, let's factor it. So this first one, can I factor it?
Yes.
Yes, what can we do? Take out the 5. If I'm just factoring my denominator, a lot of times I just write it right underneath it. K minus 2, can we do anything with that? No. So the reason you want them factored is that shows you what your common denominator is. So you just look for the pieces. So what's one of the pieces we see? K minus 2. What's another piece? 5. So our common denominator is going to be 5 and then K minus 2. So you want the individual pieces because then you can see what they're missing. Is this first fraction missing anything? No. So this first one does not get multiplied by a thing. The second fraction Is it missing anything? Yeah, it has the k minus 2, so which one is it missing? 5. So our new numerator will be 20. So that's all just getting yourself a common denominator. Have we done any subtraction yet? No, not yet. So how many k squared? 1k squared. What's our constant? Does our denominator change? No. Yeah, now in order to simplify, what should we do to our numerator? Factor. So I think adding and subtracting gets kind of weird because you factor part of it in the beginning, but you don't factor the other part, but then you come back to it and you're going to factor it anyway. K squared minus 4, what does it factor to? K plus 2, k minus 2, which is super handy. Why? Yeah. So what's left in your numerator? Denominator? 5. Next one. Do we have a common denominator? No. So what do we do to get our common denominator? Factor the denominator. First one is good. Second one, what will it factor to? What multiplies to 24?
Plus 8, 5.
Yeah, plus 8 plus 3. And we need that so we can see our common denominator. So the common denominator is just all the individual pieces. What's one of the pieces? 5 plus 8. What's another piece? Are there any other pieces? No. So those pieces are nice to look at because you can tell this first fraction, what piece is it missing? It already has the y plus 8. It's missing the y plus 3. Yeah, 7y plus 21. Good. The second one, is it missing any pieces? Nope.
No.
Nope. So it's just the 35. Yep, it already has the 2 pieces, so we can just copy it down. Now do your actual adding or subtracting. How many y's? What's our constant? 56. So that's the adding and subtracting. From the adding and subtracting, we want to simplify. Now, in order to simplify, what do we need to do? Take out the 7. We need to factor our numerator. 56 divided by 7, which is super handy. Why is it super handy? Final answer, 7 over y plus 3. So once you get the common denominator, it's all kind of downhill. Next ones. I think that someone likes this one. I don't know what number that is. Here, what should we do first? Get a common denominator, so we need to factor. What part gets factored? The bottoms only. Do not factor this, because if you factor this, you won't be able to do any adding over there. So we just factor the bottom. What does m squared minus 4 factor to? M plus 2, m minus 2. Can we do anything with the second guy? No. So you look at the individual pieces. What pieces can you see? M plus 2, what else? Is our first fraction missing any pieces? No. Already has them both. Is our second fraction missing any pieces? Yeah, it's missing our m plus 2. What is it? Perfect, 2m plus 4.
So we don't factor the first one.
Exactly. You never factor this top piece right away because if this is in parentheses, you can't add them. Because when you're adding, you're just combining like terms. So you need to see them for what they are. How many m squares will we have? 1 m squared. How many m's? Constant. So you can't factor the top yet, otherwise you could not make this jump because you wouldn't be able to put them together. Now you want to factor the top for what purpose? Yeah, so you can cross stuff off. So what will the top factor to? Can we cancel? Yep. So we're left with m plus 5 over m minus 2. Can we cancel anymore?
No.
Can we cancel these m's? No. Remember, if you have adding and subtracting, they cannot cancel away. So you're just done right there. Next one. Do we have a common denominator? No. So what do we do? Factor. How does the first one factor? Yes, take out the 4.
Minus 5.
How does the second one factor? Both negative. What numbers? Yeah. Exactly. So you know that they're both missing something. So step 1, write down everything that you see so you know which ones are missing. So what's something we see? 4. What else? What else? P minus 3. So our first fraction, it has the 4, it has the p minus 5. What part is it missing? The p minus 3. So our new numerator will be the second fraction. Which one is that missing? It's missing the 4. It has the other 2. So that new one will be perfect, 4p minus 24. Are we now set up to add or subtract? Yes. So get your common denominator. Write your denominator first, because then you can see missing parts. How many p's will this one have? How many constants? Negative 6 plus negative 24? Negative 30. Exactly, you can take the 6 out. So if you stop right here, you have added them together. It's just the last step would be simplifying it. So take the 6 out, which is super helpful. Why? And what else? Yeah, the 6 and the 4. Can we reduce the 6 and a 4?
Yeah.
What number can they both be divided by? 2. So now it's a 3 on top. And then what's the 4 turned into? 2. And then we saw that p minus 3 hanging out. Can we cancel these 3's? No, because that one has a minus sign with it. Next one. Do we have a common denominator? No. So what can we do? Factor. How do we factor that first one? Take out the 2. How do we factor the second one? Take out an r. A lot of times if you just have 2 pieces here and they're not perfect squares, you're just looking for what you can take out. So we can take out the r to give us r plus 4. To find the common denominator, you just look at all the pieces. So total, what pieces do we have? 2 and r and what else? 2 r plus 4. The reason I like doing this first is I think it's easier to see what missing pieces you have. So what piece is missing from the first one? An r. It has the 2, it has the r plus 4. So what's our new numerator going to be? R squared. The second one, what's that one missing? 2. So what's our new numerator over there? 16. Now we can actually add them together to give us r squared minus 16. So that's the subtraction, but now we need to make sure it's actually simplified. So to actually simplify this, what should we do? Factor it. How? Perfect square minus a perfect square? R plus and minus 4. What will reduce?
R minus 4.
R plus 4s. Can the 2 and the 4 reduce? Can the R reduce? No. We're going to do one more. I think it's number 13. Yeah, number 13. Do we have a common denominator? No. Can we factor? No. It's kind of like these are already factored. So just imagine that these are already in like their own little parentheses. Like that's already a factor term. It's just one single term. So what would our common denominator be here?
4 plus 1 W plus 1 W.
Yeah. So if you have things that like they can't be factored, it's kind of just a standalone thing. It's just think of it as its own little piece. So the first one, what's the first one missing?
W minus 7.
W minus 7. So what's 5 times W minus 7?
5 W minus 7.
The second fraction, what's that guy missing?
W plus 1.
W plus 1. So that one will turn into 8W plus 1. Now we can add and subtract.
8W plus 8.
Yep, good catch. W's, how many? 13. Negative 35 plus 8. Positive or negative 27? Negative 27. And then to simplify this, what should we look for first? Factoring. Can you factor 13W minus 27?
No.
No. Nothing can come out, so you're just done right there. So the assignment is just to finish this packet. You have what, 1 left on the first page? And then you should have 1 through 6 already done on the second page. The only thing is, just be careful of your factoring. If you know how to factor, the rest of this should go by pretty okay.